टीम को बहुत बहुत बधाई देना चाहूँगा और बहुत अच्छा रहा। मैं समझता हूँ कि लगभग 50 पार्टिसिपेंट तो थे ऑनलाइन एंड ऑफलाइन, तो ये बहुत ही सक्सेसफुल रहा।
Please mute yourself, जशवंत भाई, please mute yourself.
हाँ, अच्छा, अब ये अपना प्रोग्राम शुरू करने से पहले जैसे अपनी परंपरा है, सबसे पहले मैं कछारा साहब को निवेदन करूंगा कि मंगलाचरण के साथ वो अपने कार्यक्रम की हम शुरुआत करें। कछारा साहब प्लीज। हाँ।
नमो अरिहंताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो ऐर्याणं नमो अज्जायाणं नमो लोये सव्वसाहुणं ऐसो पंच नमोकारो सर्वपावपणासनं मंगलानं च सर्वेसिं परमं हवै मंगलम् परमं हवै मंगलम्।
Dr. Shailesh Darji is there. I would like to extend a special welcome to him. I'm
Yes.
very happy that he could join.
Please give brief introduction as well. भंडारी साहब थोड़ा सा परिचय देना चाहेंगे उनका?
डॉक्टर शिशिर रॉय का? हाँ,
शिशिर रॉय और जो अभी
डॉक्टर शिशिर रॉय जी
जी बोलिए सर।
डॉक्टर शैलेश दर्जी का इंट्रोडक्शन?
हाँ, उनका भी और ये शिशिर रॉय साहब का भी।
He is a doctor here. We want to work with him. He is working, I think, with Dr. Sudhir Shah in neurological problems. So I'm very happy that he's here to attend this lecture on consciousness, because this is one active program with us. May I request Dr. Shailesh to put on his video and tell us briefly about his activities?
डॉक्टर शैलेश जी,
डॉक्टर शैलेश दर्जी,
अनम्यूट कीजिए आप। डॉक्टर शैलेश,
he is not there, it seems.
Yes, sir.
I'm very happy that you could come and you are here. So
yes,
let
sir.
us.
Dr. Sudhir sir told me to attend this meeting.
Can you tell a few things about yourself? What are your activities and how we can work together?
Sir, basically right now I am practicing as a neurophysician, my independent practice, and I am interested in neuroscience of consciousness.
That's very good. I'm happy that you are here. Anil Kumar साहब, let us begin.
थोड़ा सा ये डॉक्टर शिशिर रॉय साहब का भी ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन आप प्लीज दीजिए।
Dr. Sisir Roy is very well known to most of us because he gave a talk before. And this is a Farmaishi talk. I had requested him to talk about consciousness. Dr. Sisir Roy works at the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore. And he has tremendous expertise on consciousness. He has written a book with Dr. Abraham on mysteries of Akash or some title, I don't remember, but I read it thoroughly a couple of times. Very interesting book, and he has written many papers. He is an expert on Buddhism too, and he conducted a dialogue. That is when I first met him in Bangalore. He conducted a dialogue of various religious concepts. And that included Buddhism and yoga and other Sankhya and so on. And he had called me to talk about Jainism. So that was one of the very good meeting. And he has written that book with Professor Srikantan, who was our director at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research when I was there at TIFR. So I had a chance to meet all of them. That this National Institute of Advanced Studies is doing work on consciousness, very, in great detail, and they collaborate with NIMHANS and other institutes, and there are many experts there. So I requested, we wanted to make a model of consciousness based on Jain concepts, where karma, jnana, chetana, and atma all are related, all are, um, intermingled, all take part in consciousness. So I think he has kindly agreed to give this talk, and I'm very happy to welcome him here.
Thank you, Varun Bhandari Sahab. We are happy that Dr. Sisir Roy is with us, and definitely will be benefited with his talk. Now I request Dr. Sisir Roy, please deliver your lecture, please. Dr. Roy, please.
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
Good
Today,
evening, sir.
I will mainly focus on the topics we have elaborated in our book published in 2011 with Professor Alp Abraham. And this is a kind of mathematical analysis about consciousness, mind-body problem, etc. So, can you start the slideshow?
Purviji, are you
Okay.
there?
Sir,
हाँ,
is
तो
it
slide नहीं
visible?
दिख रही
I
है
have started sharing.
Okay.
Is it visible?
No.
Oh, no.
I'll do it
now.
again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we can see it.
Okay.
Full screen कर दीजिए, please. Can you go to slideshow or something?
Yeah.
Yes, very good.
Okay.
So, in this series, I gave one talk I think in February, and that was the states of meditation and challenge to neuroscience. But this time, I am going to deliver a talk, especially the model of consciousness. So, the name of the talk, I have a little bit changed it, and I have given it networks of meaning. Oh, what happened?
હું નેક્સ્ટ સ્લાઇડ કરવા ગઈ એમાં જતો રહ્યો.
Okay. Can you do it? Some garbage is coming.
You can reload it, I guess.
Yeah.
No, okay. Now it is okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I will try to explain why we need concept of networks, what is the meaning of networks of meaning, and how it is related to consciousness, and what kind of model we are trying to build up called model of consciousness. I am tempted to quote a famous statement by David Bohm. So he was a great physicist and philosopher. He was very much influenced by Indian philosophy. Especially, he had deep connections with Jiddu Krishnamurti. And he was associated with Krishnamurti Foundation for many, many years. So once it wrote that what is meant by creation of meaning? Creation of meaning is one of the most primordial characteristics of consciousness. So Bohm, he proposed that to consider meaning as both mental and physical in nature, adding that it could serve as a bridge between these two sides of reality, body and mind. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So I am just giving the brief plan of my talk: dynamical networks and mind-body problem, then networks of meaning and consciousness, dynamical cellular networks and quantum vacuum, and finally, our proposed model of consciousness. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the book we published in 2011 from New York. Name is Demystifying the Akasha, Consciousness and the Quantum Vacuum, jointly with internationally famous mathematician Ralph Abraham. And today, I will speak mainly on the model we have elaborated or we have proposed in this book, Demystifying the Akasha. I will try to explain why we have taken the concept of Akasha and what is meant by demystifying the Akasha. Next slide, please. Yeah. So when we speak of model of consciousness, what do you mean by model? The word model has many, many meanings. In very, very general sense, sometimes it may mean metaphor, analogy, or cognitive skin, and so on. Or at the most concrete, it may mean a physical object or graphical representation, or perhaps a computer simulation. Now, let us come to the word consciousness. I'm not going to talk or spend much time on the very word of consciousness because it has a spectrum of meanings. Besides the more common meaning of individual mental awareness, it may also include the personal consciousness, unconscious system, and collective mind, consciousness and unconsciousness. It is this later meaning that we generally intend by this word. So I am not dwelling with what are the meanings of consciousness, but the other related topics like what happened? What happened? This presentation. Can you change it? Hello?
No changes.
No.
Just you click slide number 5th, then it will be okay.
Can I
No,
click
this
it?
is first. It is first. You click just 5th number.
Yeah, number
5.
Number 5. You just click it.
Yes.
No, it's not coming.
Sir, is this okay? Because I cannot see the slide number as I have done full screen.
No, in my computer it is just showing the first one, the title
No, just
page.
Field
you can
metaphor
also
of
do this.
consciousness is done.
Yeah, the plan. I mean, after you know the image of the book, and then the next slide.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can also make it slideshow and just scroll down. No problem.
I can do it.
Little above, yes. Near to home. Home insert design here.
No, what happened?
Fifth पे लगाइए.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why don't you go to slideshow here at the top and then start with 5th slide.
Yes, yes, this one.
No, in my computer, it is showing the first one.
Purvi, scroll down.
Yes, yes. Now it is coming. Yeah.
Yes, but I don't
Just
see.
you click the 5th number. Yeah. Yes, this one. Yes. Double click. Or make it slideshow in the line
Sir,
of
I am
home
trying to
insert.
do, but नहीं हो रहा है, यहाँ पे hang हो गया है.
तो
Oh.
रीलोड कर लीजिए आप.
शिशिर रॉय, आप भी ट्राई कर रहे हो?
I'll click number 5.
नहीं, if we both are doing, then it won't be able to do.
Okay.
Either you do or I do. We both
No,
can.
you do it. You do it. I'm not doing. You do it.
Now is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay. This is okay?
Yeah, this is okay.
Yeah.
So the slide before, can you put it, the previous slide?
Sir, it get hang in my laptop. કેમ નથી થતું? Hang થઈ ગયું છે.
Okay. Okay, keep it. Can you keep it? Can I start?
Yes, you start.
Okay. Now I'll speak on the metaphor of consciousness. We say field metaphor of consciousness. No, can you show me the previous one? Previous slide.
I'm trying to.
पूरी बहन इसी स्लाइड के अंदर नीचे वो एरो आ रहा है.
हाँ सर, पर नहीं हो रहा है. मेरा यहाँ पे सर फुल स्क्रीन है. मैं अप डाउन एरो कर रही हूँ, पर नहीं हो रहा है. हैंग हो गया है.
नहीं, इसी स्लाइड में थोड़ा सा ये क्रशर को इसके ऊपर लाइए, स्लाइड के ऊपर. हाँ, अब इसकी, हाँ ये आए ना, इसी तरह से इसको बैक करिए. हाँ,
हो गया.
Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm not spending more time on what is the meaning of consciousness exactly, but it has some more meaning of when we say model of consciousness. I said already that it includes apart from the individual mental awareness, it may also include personal unconscious system and the collective mind, conscious and unconsciousness. And the later meaning we are taking here to discuss about the conscious and unconscious and collective mind. So next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So people say that what is the metaphor of consciousness? I mean, there may be various metaphor of consciousness. What we are considering called field metaphor of consciousness. What do you mean by that? Actually, if you look at the ancient Indian tradition, then this field metaphor of consciousness has a long history. We can try to explain this, that there is a concept called akasha. Normally, people say it's a kind of ether, one of the 5 elements of the material world. And in the medieval literature of Kashmiri Shaivism, there is a metaphor of spand or vibration. And this is fundamental to a model of consciousness, with many tattvas or levels or categories and implies an awareness of the field concept. And there is also an ancient awareness of the etheric field in the West, as for example, in the appearance of the Greek philosopher in 6th century BCE. But here we will take the metaphor of akasha, or kind of ether. But this is not the ether, what we consider exactly in science, in the sense that if you look Einstein's discovery of speciality of relativity, he based on an experiment called Michelson-Morley experiment, where the experiment was done whether to detect the existence of ether. And the result was that it is not possible to detect the existence of the ether by the type of experiment what Michelson and Morley did. So Einstein started his speciality of relativity saying that even if the ether exists, let us start with the theory without considering the existence of ether. So here when we say akasha, as in our ancient wisdom, this akasha, this is a kind of metaphor. And let me try to explain this metaphor. I will tell you why we have started this metaphor of akasha in understanding consciousness. And also the very interesting insights from Kashmiri Shaivism, the metaphor of sponge. Sponge, as I told you, is a vibration. But it is also very difficult for a scientist to understand the nature of vibration they talked about. I will tell you the later in details. Next one. Yeah. Then we are coming to what is called mind's architecture. And some progress has been done in this way. And if you try to consider the models of mind and brain, this is primarily or mainly shifting towards a connectionist architecture, that is a kind of network of organization of nodes which coding neurons or logical proposition, and the links, the weighted connection between nodes. So the brain's neural organization is much more analogous to a network organization, to a system of rules, as in the computational paradigm. This is very, very important, because when you say there is much more analogous to a network organization, well, I will explain what is meant by this statement. Next one. Yeah. Before going into that, before going to develop this model of consciousness with Professor Ralph Abraham, I have started working with Professor Manfred Ricard. He's a German theoretical physicist working on quantum gravity. So there is a history behind it. It's very fascinating and challenging issue when people consider the Planck scale physics. What is that Planck scale physics? Planck scale, the smallest scale of length and smallest scale of time below which no measurement is possible. So there is no concept of space, no concept of time, and no concept of causality. Now, it raises a very, very difficult and challenging issue. At the very small scale, called Planck scale, below which there is no space, time, and causality. But in the everyday world, or even in the quantum world, we have the concept of space, time, and causality. So the challenging issue is that how we can get a continuous space-time which we use in everyday life, starting from a discrete structure. This has also very deep philosophical issue. And to understand this problem, we have developed a kind of network issue. And I will tell you why this type of network we have used in our later works as a fundamental step to make the models of consciousness. Next one. Yeah. So before going into that Planck scale physics, I mean Planck scale where there is no space, below Planck scale there is no space, no time. Before that, I mean the famous physicist Paul Dirac, won Nobel Prize, of course. In 1932, he wrote the origins of quantum vacuum evolved from the positron predicted by himself in 1928. So what he wrote, I mean, this is a mathematical notation that K represents a state for which there are no photons, no electrons or positrons present. One would be inclined to suppose this state to be a perfect vacuum, but it cannot be because it is not stationary. Let us call the state represented by this the no particle state at a certain time. Now, if we start with the no particle state, it does not remain the no particle state. Particles get created where none previously existed. Their energy coming from the interactions part of the Hamiltonian, which causes transitions in which a photon is emitted and simultaneously an electron-positron pair is created. This is very, very important concept introduced by Dirac in the history of science itself, because he discovered the particle called positron. And during the process of discovering, positron means, I mean, you know, the electron has a positive charge and mass and spin half. But what is positron? Positron is opposite to electron, which is a positive charge, the same mass and same spin. So during the process, he discovered that there exists a kind of state called vacuum state. And this quantum vacuum has several interesting properties, which is useful. If we can understand this quantum vacuum, then it is very useful to understand the model or to make the model of consciousness. Next one. Yeah. So we are saying quantum vacuum. What is that? Dirac proposed it in 1932. And quantum vacuum is a sheathing sparkling with elementary particles emerging from nowhere in pairs, and after a very short time, vanishing again as they came. It is not really continuous geometrical space, nor field like the four fundamental fields of mathematical physics. However, associated with this sheathing force is a continuous field of energy called the 0-point energy. So what is the lesson from here? The lesson is that there exists a certain state called quantum vacuum where there is no space, no time. But in the real world or above Planck scale, there is space and time. So we have a discrete structure in space-time in quantum vacuum, and out of that, we are creating a continuous space-time. So the issue is whether, what is the reality? Reality is discrete structure of space-time or continuous structure of space-time. We will show that this continuous structure of space-time is a kind of illusion called Maya in Indian philosophy. I will tell you little while later. Next one. Next one. Next one, please.
I have already done twice.
Hello.
Yes, I have done.
No, in my computer, yeah, okay. again, people might ask that, no, just before that.
Yes, 3 slides I have done. You said next one, sir.
No, okay, the time gap. No. Previous.
Yeah, I'm going back.
Okay. Previous.
This one?
Okay. Now go to, yeah. Now stop it here. So in the West, the field model normally initially popularized by Madame Blavatsky, you know that she was associated with the movement here, Theosophical Society, with Annie Besant and Leadbeater and other people. So she popularized this field model in the West, and Taylor Chardin, Pregeometry, Capra, Bentov, and Rupert Sheldrake and other people, they popularized this field model in the West. But all of these developments involve only in continuous fields and their vibration, like water waves, good vibration, waves of consciousness, and the like. So in the West, they popularized a kind of field model of consciousness, but those fields are called continuous fields. Next one. Yeah. Now we have a very important development called atomistic thinking and quantum fields. So what is the concept? I mean, you know that in the beginning of 20th century, or in 1900 itself, the quantum revolution started. And quantum fields have entered the conversations of the mystics as well as scientists. Specifically, is the quantum vacuum field or zero-point field of quantum field theory. That has come to the fore as a favorite metaphor in consciousness study, and even identified explicitly with Akashic field. Erwin Laszlo, he published several books called Akashic Field, and especially the name of the book Akashic Field he published in 1987, and he used this concept of Akashic field as a metaphor of consciousness. Next one. Okay. With Professor Manfred Rickard in Germany, we tried to build up a model of this kind of vacuum where there is no concept of geometry, no concept of space, no concept of time in the conventional sense. So what is that concept? I mean, there our motivation was to build up the structure of quantum vacuum and to understand the phenomena we are observing in nature. We introduced a concept called, mainly Manfred Rickard, he introduced a concept called pregeometry. What is meant by that pregeometry? All of us, we know that what is meant by geometry. Geometry, say Euclidean geometry. If you take 2 points, then the shortest distance will be a line between 2 points. Then the lines make a triangle, and there exists triangle inequality like this. This is the properties of a geometry. There are Euclidean geometry and non-Euclidean geometry. Where the rules of the Euclidean geometry do not hold, called Riemannian geometry or other kinds of non-Euclidean geometry. Now, if we have an arena or we have a reality where there is no concept of geometry itself, so how we can start it and how you can get it a geometry or space-time in the outside world. So his idea is very novel. He considered that let us start with a pre-geometric notion. What is meant by that? That only we will consider a set of points, but they won't satisfy the other rules of the geometry, like Euclidean geometry or Riemannian geometry. in Euclidean cases, the summation of the three angles will be 180 degree, but in Riemann case it will be different. So his approach was that let us start with, say, some discrete points, and from discrete points, starting with the discrete points with very simplified rules, not like rules of the Euclidean or non-Euclidean geometry, whether we can reach to a geometric structure to understand the quantum vacuum. So, I mean, can you elaborate? Yes, we can try to elaborate that. We can start with such kind of spatial points like a structure of disorder. I mean, no ordering. If ordering comes, then causality and other thing comes. But at that level, there is no causality, no ordering. So from a structure of disorder, you can reach to a order at the Planck scale. So from pre-geometric notion, we are coming to a geometric notion. This we can think in a more concrete terms also. Like you can consider, say, a magnet or magnetic substance. Normally, before considering a magnet, in the atomic scales, these elements are in a disorder state. But suddenly, a phase change, phase transition occurs, which gives rise to ordering, and we call magnet. So this kind of metaphor or analogy he has used in understanding from pre-geometric level to geometric level. But when I joined with him to build up a real Planck scale physics, then I was working with a statistical geometry or probabilistic geometry. What is meant by that? I mean, I'm giving you some glimpse of the history because then you'll be able to understand more. In 1940, a mathematician who is from Vienna, Austria, and who was assistant of famous intuitionist mathematician von Brauer. His name is Karl Minger. Karl Minger, he was trying to understand how from a discrete points you can get a continuum. I mean, this is a old mathematical problem. Starting from a discrete structure, discrete points, how can you come to the continuity? He introduced a novel idea which helped us to build up the model, our model. So what is that idea? He told that instead of considering a set of points, set of discrete points, let us consider a set of lumps, hazy lumps or fuzzy lumps. Lumps means it is an extension. If we consider a set of lumps or set of small regions, then there is a possibility that this region can overlap. Mathematically, it means that he introduced a concept of probability or statistics by which you can get up a continuum or continuum states out of this discrete level. So this is a big leap in mathematics, and the name of the mathematical this area is known as statistical geometry. Then I started working on that in physics. I mean, many other scientists also, and I published a book called Statistical Geometry and its Applications to Microphysics and Cosmology in 1996, published by Kluwer Academics in Netherlands. So myself and Manfred Ricard in Germany, they mixed up the two things. One, pre-geometric notion, set of small points. Instead of set of small points, we consider set of small region or lumps and introduce kind of fluctuations by which we can build up the geometric notion. And that geometry is statistical geometry, which you can take by average. You can get the ordinary Euclidean or ordinary Riemannian geometry. So with the help of that, we are able to build up a model of the vacuum. But up till now, I have not considered how this model of vacuum will help us to build up a model of consciousness. And this idea has a very deep connections with Indian philosophical system. Next slide. Yeah. So what we consider, I mean, Required and myself, Roy, we consider that at the level where there is no space, no time, we consider a kind of cellular network. What is that? Cellular network is just like a neural network in the brain itself. And they can be represented by graph theory. So natural number like positive or zero or integer, there is node state and attached to node and label -1, 0 or +1 called the bond state attached to each bond. I mean, you consider several nodes, they are connected by links. Like in neuron, the neurons are connected, and you can consider the nodes as the neurons and the synapses, they join the neurons. So like neuronal network, we consider a cellular network in a very abstract sense. And then we introduced a kind of rules by which these nodes and link, they will give rise to a continuum state. Next slide. Yeah. So how do you conceptualize? I mean, we conceptualize such a system as a flow diagram. Now you can see how really this is related to physics and philosophy. So here, each node as holding a quantized amount of information or charge that is changing step by step with a ticking clock that is part of the model and keeps track of the discrete microtime. With each time of the clock, quanta of information will flow through each bond like tennis balls through a pipe. Specifically, if a bond connects a node to a node A to a node B and has bound state +1, then information will move from A to B. The quantity of information at A will discrete, while that at B will increase by discrete amounts that are specified by the rules of the model. You can ask me that, well, I have considered time also here, but I told you at that level, there does not exist concept of space and time. Okay, this is a good observation, and we will say that we introduced concept of 2 dimension of time. And what is, I will explain later what is 2 dimension of time and how it is related to our ancient Indian traditions. 2 dimension time, one time is not the physical time we perceive. It is beyond our perception. It is at the level below the Planck scale. And there is another time, at the everyday time. So there is 2 time, one time below Planck scale, another time the above Planck scale. These are very abstract things, or we can get insights from Indian traditional wisdom? Yes, we can get it. Next slide. Yeah. Before that, little bit, let me tell you about graph theory, because we are considered a network like neuronal network, and we represent it in mathematics by using called graphs. So a graph is nothing but a collection of nodes, that is abstract points connected by links on line segments. 2 points and there is a link. In this way, we can think of a network. And a directed graph is a collection of nodes connected by bonds linked with a chosen direction. And a directed graph may be turned into a graph by erasing the arrowheads. Similarly, we can introduce more and more concepts from graph theory. I am not going into details of these things. Who is interested, they can go to details of the graph theory and try to understand the properties of the network. Even this network is applicable to at the neuronal level. Next slide. Okay. Now comes mind-body issue. Laszlo, I told you that Hungarian physicist Laszlo, he introduced a field called Akashic field. So it is the field that Laszlo proposes as the physical substrate of psi phenomena, the entirely fundamental information field associated with the quantum vacuum. So according to Laszlo, this is a kind of physical field, but this is very fundamental. However, entanglement of mind and body is achieved by the mathematical function of wave function or that of the quantum vacuum or 0 point field, that of the dynamical cellular network beyond space and time, or even by the intention is this Shiva Tattva. I will tell you why we are considering Shiva Tattva and what is the Tattva. It must be counted as sort of psychonesis or a paranormal phenomena. Next slide. Yeah. Now I will tell you the dynamical aspects of networks and mind. We know that complex dynamical processes are truly fundamental to the creative and generative aspects of the mind. And in this regard, chaos theory, or study of order underlying apparent disorder or randomness, provides very profound ways of understanding the evolution and self-organization of a wide range of complex systems, including mental systems. So we are considering a mental process is a complex dynamical process. We said that mind processes are constantly changing, evolve in time, mutually dependent and self-organizing. And most psychological and social systems exhibit dynamics at the edge of chaos. They display instability and show nonlinear processes to contextual forces, thus leading the system to bifurcate. I mean, this is a very common term used in nonlinear dynamics. They also sensitive dependence on initial condition like chaotic behavior. I mean, there is a issue, again, some epistemological issues or more fundamental issues like, we know that all of us know that in Newtonian paradigm, we say the Newtonian equations, they are deterministic equation. What is meant by that? It means that if you like to see the trajectory of stone chip, you are throwing a stone chip. And according to Newtonian dynamics, if you know the initial point from which place or at which instant of time you are throwing, then the Newtonian equation will fully predict where the stone will fall or stone will go. This is called deterministic equation. This is fine, but in around 1960s, some very strange phenomena people discovered called chaos theory. What is that? People found that in some nonlinear systems, if we change slightly the initial points, like at which instant you are sending the stone or which point from which you are throwing it, if there is slight variation of the initial points, then you cannot predict exactly where the stone will land up. This is the chaos theory. People discovered it. So even in deterministic system, you cannot say that you can have a kind of predictability. I mean, you can predict something with complete certainty. And that is a very, very big puzzle in not only nonlinear dynamics, but in the philosophical level. So why I am saying so? Because if you extend that argument, you will see that even in the deterministic systems, whether there exists free will or not, again, free will is deeply connected with consciousness. That's a big issue. But well, today I am not going to tell you how the free will, deterministic systems or non-deterministic systems are related. Next slide. Yeah. What is our model? So we started with a model with a dynamic cellular network, and which consists of large number of nodes like points, abstract points that store information and are connected by links, or in brain like synapses that move information from one node to another. And this network is changing very rapidly as information flows, and more nodes appear and disappear. So we position the network of outside. Why this is very interesting for us to build up the consciousness model? Because this network is not, it is outside the space and time. And eventually, space and time are constructed from the model by an algorithmic process. So this is very, very important if we want to understand the model of, or build up model of consciousness. Because in most of the Indian philosophical schools, starting from Vedas, in the beginning, there is no space, no time, nothing. I mean, nothing, I am telling very loosely. It is not really nothing. So how from that stage, a universe appears, universe beginning to manifest? Because universe means there is kind of order, disorder, everything, geometric structure, everything. So why we started with this network? We started with the network to understand the quantum vacuum. But why this is important for our next step, for understanding or constructing the model of consciousness? Because this network is outside of space and time. But something called space and time emerged out of this evolution of this network. So I'm going to tell you the story, and of course, the model of consciousness. Next slide. Yeah, so as I already told you, that my collaborator required from Germany and myself, we tried to build up a dynamical cellular network of nodes and bonds. So the macroscopic level, that self-organization from another cellular, we have two levels of networks. At one level, in the network, it is beyond the space and time. It is beyond the perception. It is beyond our sensory organs. But at the other level, there is space and time, and which is, of course, within the scope of our sensory organs and other geometric properties. So this is the model we build up to understand quantum vacuum, not yet consciousness. Next slide. Yeah. Now comes quantum vacuum and my collaborator Abraham Roy model. So what we proposed, I mean, what we did next to this required and Roy model, that is two levels of dynamic cellular network. Why we started? Because why we started with this model of required and Roy, we have taken this model of quantum vacuum because the network at that scale is beyond space and time, and also in being digital. This is very, very important. Digital means discrete. So the question is coming, what is reality? Reality is discrete, atomic, or reality is continuum. People will say, well, we see in the everyday life, it is continuum. We'll say, no, this is, somebody will say, no, this is creation of the mind. This is illusion. Next slide. Yeah. Then what I did with Ralph Abraham. So we have taken our previous model, but we have followed a kind of simulation or agent-based model to understand the action of the model in a better way. And during the process, we found this is very, very important to build up the model of consciousness. So agent-based modeling is a new style of computer programming suitable for modeling dynamical networks, cellular membranes, and complex dynamical systems in general. And there are several programming environments for agent-based modeling, and we have done of these with a software programming or NetLogo to create a computer simulations of a simplified version on the previous model that we call now with Abraham and Roy model. Next slide. Yeah. Now we are coming to consciousness model. We applied this Abraham-Roy model to consciousness and mind-body problem. How do we apply it? Our model is a process by which illusion of continuous space self-organizes from a discrete substructure, a sub-microscopic corpuscular dynamic cellular network, a sort of finite point set of steroids. What is meant by this? I mean, there exists a kind of discrete structure at the very fundamental level. And from discrete structure, I told you the discrete points, they self-organizes. Like chaos theory, there is a very famous concept called Lorentz attractor. I mean, if we run the program, we have run the program, we have seen the discrete points, they are coming closer and make closer and closer and make it a continuum. And we did it with computer simulation software called NetLogo. Well, this is fine, but what is the result? The mind-body problem is a perennial thread, in Eastern and Western philosophy. And there are many illustrious names on that. What in our model, ambient space of nature, according to consensual reality, is actually an epiphenomenon of the atomistic and finite network. So this is the full Abraham-Roy process, which we call condensation. Actually, condensation is a two-step process, digital condensation followed by digital to analog and spatial embedding. What do you mean by that? We consider a set of points, they form a network, and that network, the points ultimately, they come closer and closer together because of their peculiar nonlinear properties called attractor property. And that property is called condensation. So by that means we are getting a continuous space and time. So this is a very peculiar property of the network called self-organization. The network which is defined beyond space and time, beyond perception, beyond sensory organs, but they have a particular property that they can self-organize, and this self-organization brings us to the physical space. Next slide. Yeah. So what is the condensation process? Let me try to explain in a more elaborate way. This process creates the universe from the submicroscopic network, which is fluctuating in its own microscopic scale. I told you how these 2 points in the network, they are making a kind of attractor so that you are reaching to a physical space and physical time. And they self-organization. But how physically it is done? Physically it is done, we said, because there is a fluctuation at the very submicroscopic level. And fluctuation is just like sponge in Kashmiri Shaivism. So we now imagine that after a rather large and perhaps variable number of these micro-time ticks, the state of the universe is to be updated or recreated to a new state that we call an occasion. The process of creating an occasion from the activity of the network we call condensation. And following the early philosophers, the ongoing condensation process and its sequence of occasions creates space, macro-time, and space-time history of the objects moving through the space-time that we experience as human consciousness. We may never know the details of the condensation process, but we'll now attempt an abstract outline or goal now is to envision a process with the digital network as a impounded the analog universe as we know as output called condensation process. So what is the importance of from the digital to analog? If you look at the brain, there, if I ask somebody that, I mean, from neuroscientific perspective, whether brain perceives in a digital way or analog way. In 1954, more than 70 years before, almost 70 years before, there was a 3-day meeting at MIT. And the participants were John von Neumann, not 54, von Neumann probably died, maybe 52. John von Neumann, then Norbert Wiener, McCullough, Pitts, all other big guys. The issue was whether brain acts a digital way or analog way. And what is the result of 3 days meeting with the big guys who have knowledge both in neuroscience as well as computer science? And the answer was no decision. We don't know whether brain acts like a digital way or analog way. Now after 70 years, so many progresses of neuroscience, we don't know whether brain works as a digital way or analog way. But analog way exists. In which way? Suppose a photon, I mean light is coming and falling in eye, I mean on the retina. So if you reduced the intensity of the light so that a single photon will impinge on the retina, and then the pathways will be activated, actions. Ions will be propagated through actions coming into central nervous system, and will recognize what is the object outside. Now, a single photon, the information is divided into multiple paths. How it is possible? Because bit or qubit, that cannot be divided. Only answer is that this is analogous process. This is not digital way. So from digital to analog is a very, very, very mysterious and very difficult step. Some people are trying to build up electronic structure which acts like analog way or which acts like digital way. But from digital and analog, this debate is still there in human brain. Next slide. What happens?
Sorry, by mistake stop share हो गया.
Okay. Okay. One slide before. Okay, next slide. Yeah, this is our simulation. These are the nodes, you know, they are discrete. But after running many times of simulation, agent-based simulation, they show a attracting property in the sense these points they will come closer and closer and we'll get a continuum. Next slide. This is also other representation. I don't have now the software with me. Otherwise, I could show that starting with the simulation, even in the computer here, I could show that how this discrete structure gives rise to a continuum one. Next slide. Yeah. Now question comes, what is the relevance of our works? Has it any relevance in ancient Indian tradition? It reminds me the famous dialogue in Yoga Vasishtha. It's a dialogue between Vasishtha and Rama, Lord Ram. Vasishtha replied, there does exist, O Rama, the power or energy of the infinite consciousness, which is in motion all the time. That alone is the reality of all inevitable futuristic events, for it penetrates all the echoes in time. It is by that power that the nature of every object in the universe is ordained. I mean, it becomes ordered. The power of Chit Shakti is also known as Mahashakti, the great existence, Mahachiti, the great intelligence, Mahashakti, the great power, Mahadrishti, the great vision, Mahakriya, the great doer or doing, etc., etc., or Mahaspand, the great vibration. So it is this power that endows everything with its characteristic quality. The Vasishtha told Rama that it is the power of infinite consciousness. So look, now we have some parallel with our dynamical network. In our network process, also these discrete points are called nodes. They have the capacity to come closer and closer and make it an order structure. Even in Vedas, the problem is from rhythm. Rhythm means cosmic order, from order and disorder. How from order or disorder to order emerges. And in our perennial philosophy, they say this is because of the power of the infinite consciousness. But we have a real simulation and real dynamical network where this kind of property also exists. That's why we thought that we can build up really, though very abstract way, the model of consciousness. Next slide. Yeah. No, the previous slide. Yeah. So what we told about Akashu. You know the 5 basic elements in most of the Indian philosophical school. And 4 of matter like fire, earth, air, and water, and 1 of the pure space or ether called the Akasha. The ether has 2 phases. One is the subtle ether, another is gross ether. We don't know, and we are not very concerned about that. What is called ether? We say this is a very abstract concept, and it has 2 reality, 2 stage ether. One is subtle, one is gross. How it is relevant here? Now, if you look at our dynamical network, the nodes of the network, we say these are subtle ether because they are beyond our sensory perception, while the physical space is created in temporal slices by condensation corresponding to the gross ether. So we have a similarity, what is called subtle ether and gross ether. I am finishing shortly. So the nodes condense into cliques that participate as fuzzy lumps, and then in a continuous three dimensions appears. Next slide. Yeah, I have told you there is two time dimension. The discrete microscopic time parameter T used above does not represent macroscopic time. I mean, at the submicroscopic level, we have a time called small t. There is a mistake here, capital T. And the macroscopic scale, we call capital T. So we have two time in our cellular network to understand the model of consciousness. Just I will finish it within 2-3 slides. Next slide. Yeah. There, in most of you are familiar with Shaiva Darshan, where it said Shiva creates space and time, and Shiva Tattva, Shiva creates two times, one is subtle and gross. Likewise, our model has two times, one is subtle time of dynamical network, and by the process of condensation, we'll get the physical time. So in the beginning, there are no geometric forms, but they emerge from the network. This is similar to the space associated with Akash Tattva. Thank you. I mean, there are other things, but if you have time, I can speak it, but I don't know how much time I have exceeded or I can get it right at the moment.
Yeah, Professor Rai, I think you can continue for 10-15 minutes more because there was delay in all those things.
Okay, so
please continue. Yeah.
Next slide. Yeah. In Kashmiri Shaivism or called Trika theory, Trika creation theory, there are very similarities. In Kashmiri Shaivites, they describe the creation of the world as the self-manifestations of the fundamental consciousness outside of the universe, called Supreme Lord or Shiva. This begins with subtle form, that conscious energy or divine Shakti, which is activated by sponge, means a throb. This is like a movement, yet not a movement, as space and time do not yet exist. This is the problem to understand the philosophical aspect of Kashmiri Shaivism, because they have a big doctrine of vibration or doctrine of sponge. But as a scientist, we have the problem. When we say vibration, it means we need kind of physical space. But here, they called a subtle form of consciousness, which is also, there is also a movement. And now, if you look in our network model, at the submicroscopic level, we have fluctuation. We have small point, we have points, and we have fluctuation. So this might be similar to Trika philosophy of the theory of sponge or theory of vibration. Next slide. Okay. Now we are coming to semantic aspect of networks. What is that? As I told you, as I quoted David Bohm's famous statement, let me try to elaborate. So the creation of meaning is one of the most primordial characteristics of consciousness. And it is also one of its most paradoxical processes, holistic yet goal-directed. I mean, though it is holistic, but it's goal-directed, seemingly immediate yet complex and multidimensional, personal and internal, yet based on transpersonal factors and bearing on external reality. As I told, David Bohm proposed to consider meaning as a both mental and physical in nature, adding that it could serve as a bridge between two sides of reality. However, in contemporary cognitive science, meaning is generally conceived as an internally generated, largely epiphenomenal process. Little attention is given to this active role and its contribution to the world beyond brain. The basic hypothesis presented here is that the generation of meaning is in itself an organization process shaping reality, while the mind is in turn shaped by reality endowed with meaning. attributing meanings, a mental act that pervades and organizes all experience. Next slide. Now we'll discuss mind-body problem, and we claim that mind-body problem resolved. So if we remind our model that the network model is at the two levels. One is at the below Planck's level, where there is no space and time. Another is at the physical world. Now, our results, we can formulate it in the process that there are two such networks. One is QX1, another is QX2. One is a mind, another is body. The mystery connection between disjoint mind and body system now becomes an epiphenomenon of the connections between QX1 and QX2, which is not mysterious at all, because for the nature of the QX model of Abraham and Roy is that of a dynamical cellular network, and we may regard both as a single entangled network. So we have a single entangled network, but at the two level, at the one level, we say the network is associated with mind, another level is body. So there is mind and body, they are not separate. They are entangled. And we have a continuum between mind and body. Next slide. And comes the monism. Kashmiri Shaivism, what they said, they say the creation of the universe in 36 tattvas was accomplished in a blink. A Shiva opened his eyes and then everything occurred. Even so, we think of the 36 tattvas and unrolling in an order sequence, and the density, as it were, increasing step by step until at the end, the levels of matter, energy, space-time, and physical forces condense. Space and time are tattvas coming at the tail end of the process. Although explicitly non-dualist, these traditions seem to lack any interconnectedness scheme. Our model, on the other hand, provides a dynamical cellular network that contains and connects all levels of consciousness. Next slide. Yeah, the interconnections of the extended universe. Suppose a model of the extended universe in several levels. For example, 5 courses of the 36 tattvas, we propose a network and Abraham Roy process of condensation. At each level, the interconnection or entanglement of the adjacent level is accomplished by mathematical condensation. Thus, there is no need to search for a physical forces to connect, for example, collective consciousness and the physical universe or the individual mind and body. In fact, it makes no sense to propose physical forces, even quantum forces, as a mechanism connecting adjacent tattvas. This could work under the materialist paradigm, in which a thought is biochemical state of the physical brain, as in the models of Eccles, Sperry, Stamp, Penrose, Amarov, etc. Instead, we propose a dynamical mathematical connection between tattvas, that all tattvas are realizations of dynamical cellular networks, and the carriers of influence between them are mathematical. That is, dynamical links pop up between nodes on different levels of creation according to rules connecting the whole shebang, although we propose mathematical connections between each tattva and its sequel. We might focus now on the bottom of the chain. Next slide. So we are almost at the end of demystifying the Akasha. What are space and time? Really, we are proposing that real space-time is a construction or condensation from a dynamical mathematical object outside, hidden by Maya or illusion, and appearing to us as a submicroscopic granulation smoothed over by the limitation of our perceptual organs. As The non-duals like Plato and Abhinavagupta and Kashmiri Sharif have been telling us that mathematical consciousness contains or illusion of ordinary reality, and mind contains both, and the super real is primary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sisir Roy. Really, it is a great work you have done. And I think our senior colleagues in JS also looking such type of work in connection with Gen View. So let us hear from others what is their comments, and if their question is there, you may raise your hand. So first raise his hand by Dr. Surendra Pokharna ji. Please unmute yourself and
Yeah.
yes, please.